because it is short enough to keep your attention and the print is big enough so that you can see it. It's probably not anything that you haven't heard over the years if you've taken classes, but what I appreciated about it was that it gave me a few aha moments about some of the same things we've heard quite a bit about high performance habits. So I hope you have something to write with, because I'm going to start off by giving you the structure that this fellow Burchard throws out his 6 characteristics of high performance. Okay? In one column, he has 3 personal performance habits. So if you wrote personal, these 3 would come underneath it, and we're going to briefly talk about each 3. Number 1 is seeking clarity. Number 2 is generating energy. And number 3 is kind of a tongue twister, assessing necessity. The next column, which could be to the right, is 3 social characteristics. 1 is increasing productivity. 2 is developing influence. And number 3 is having courage. Okay. So I think we got that. Can we get a nod? Can we get a collective nod? We're good? Good. Okay, so you got it. So we'll start at the beginning. We'll start with clarity. And I want to start with clarity because it is the most elusive. We hear the word clarity all the time. And the irony about the word clarity is sometimes clarity is not clear. At least it's very often not clear to me. Clarity is tied to vision. And we've all heard about having to have a vision before you begin projects. Clarity involves the who we are. We've heard this before too. Who we are, what we want, why we want it, and how we're going to get it. Anybody that you read who portrays themselves as a coach probably has these characteristics. All right. What I discovered in reading the book was an eye-opener for me in terms of looking at clarity a little bit differently. I have a hard time sitting down when I think about a project and starting out with a clear vision of how I want it to end up. When we apply it to our business, and when I was practicing more in real estate, I guess the clarity that I wanted if I went on a listing appointment was to get the listing. And the clarity that I wanted when I was working with a buyer was to find that buyer a home and to do those things as quickly as possible so that either I could move on to the next one and in addition see happy smiles on their faces and become friends for life. All right, that's not such a bad thing. Okay, that's kind of a good thing. But what I totally misunderstood about clarity is the eye-opener that I got from the book. I was viewing clarity as a finite, definable characteristic. And what this fellow Burchard opened my eyes to is that clarity is fluid. So if you're going to take a takeaway or a golden nugget from this, remember that phrase. Clarity in every situation is fluid. Regardless of what your vision may be of how you would like something to end up, right, that is likely not the same vision as the person that you're working with. And that's why we spend time, I think, going one step beyond our own need to find theirs. And the fluidity of the situation is situational. That's another nugget. And it's so situational that it depends upon meeting to meeting to meeting with the people that you're working with. How many of you have had circumstances where you've done a listing presentation or you've done a buyer presentation and you know that you knocked it out of the park? Show of hands. And you did the requisite things, you prepared, you brought examples, you brought data, you outlined your series of questions, you got your little wants and needs packages together and whatnot, right? And you present that, and you got pretty decent feedback to it and whatnot. And you thought you had it in the bag, only to find out 3 phone calls later that somebody outbid you on the listing, or the client was working with somebody else all along, and you were being, shall we say, dangled out there. Okay, and it's hard. Those situations are hard to swallow. I know, but the fact that you banged it out of the park is a success story for you. You know you did well, and you know that you did the right thing. But let's go back to the possibility of what went wrong. Your approach with the client could have been a variety of things. You could have been very engaging. But let's use the example of, how many of you have a style, for example, when you're taking a listing or working with a buyer, where you think you're pretty directive, or you would like to be very directive? And they seem to be nodding, but they don't like directive. And suddenly you're moving along and you're assuming this is going right, but they're sort of resenting being told, right? If you start to study the generations, boomers are kind of okay with that. Half of Gen X is okay with that. The millennials are not okay with that at all, right? And God bless us, I don't know what we're going to see in Z's or whatever the next number is, right? And we know these niches from our experience. So what do you do? What do you do? Part of your screening of your clients, in order to get their clarity, and we're talking about their clarity, is the fact that we have to accept the fact that we have to be role players. We have to do some of them exercises of mirroring, and we have to spend ample time gauging the client, whether it be via Zoom, which is not optimal, or face-to-face, really spending that moment or those moments to read them, because that'll help you to be able to adapt to presenting what it is that you want to present in a style that they'll be more receptive to, even though your plan for that day is clear. So who you are, what you are, depends upon that initial relationship that you're building. That probably is the most critical point. I open it up, Loretta, you can take people on off whatever we got them on silence. And let's share a couple of reflections on that, if we can eliminate the background noise as best as possible. So my overriding question for the clarity point is, does that make sense? And feel free, we'll take a couple of minutes and then we'll move on to the next one. Anybody? Does
What did you
anybody have an
ask?
example of this?
What did he ask?
What did you, say the question?
What's the question, John?
The question is, following what we have just outlined, okay? Have you had any example of you being crystal clear and thinking you really knocked it out of the park, and then found out that you misread something, or you did not spend the ample amount of time getting to know the client,
Right.
their wants, their needs, their hows, before you plunged into your spiel?
Right.
That's my question. And maybe you're all good. Maybe you all do it great.
John,
Yes, Sharon.
I would say
Yeah.
with first-time home buyers, I think maybe the directive maybe works a little better. If you have somebody with a little more experience, or maybe they already own a home, or I think what helps is to maybe, when you meet, is to maybe open it before you start your spiel, so to speak, is to open it up to them and let them guide where they want to go with the conversation.
How many of you start that
Just
way? How many
kind
of
of
you do
say
that?
what's on your mind. Do you have any burning questions that you want to start with? Let them go first.
What's the benefit of that, Sharon?
Well, I think it depends on the players. With the first-time home buyers, sometimes they just don't know. They don't know what to say. They don't know what they want. They don't know what to start. And if they say no, we don't have any burning questions, then you can just start in your directive way, which that's a good word, because I find that I am that way. But I just think you need to get their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. If you don't mind, can I piggyback off of Sharon? John?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Tom.
That she is 100% spot on, especially with the millennial generation. They have access to the internet and they use it. So they're very, very resourceful, and they love to share their knowledge going in, whether it be right or wrong. It makes them feel very good about all the research that they've done if you allow them to share with you their knowledge, and then you can mesh with them and give them, whatever insight you have as the expert. But Sharon's right. The first step is always to really listen, because we'll have a lot to say and you'll learn more from it.
One of the other points that he makes, and I found it endemic to realtors, is which I think was good, was when you're involved in a project with another person that is of vital importance, such as selling a house or buying a house, the phrase that he uses in the book is plan your patience. Plan your patience.
What if you don't have that?
And ask Chuck to go on the listing. No, I don't know. If you don't have patience, it's tough. It's tough. Okay. Good question, Sharon. And he didn't have an answer for that in the book.
Okay.
I think his answer would be get patience.
Okay.
Or be patient.
You want this?
Any other reflections on this clarity thought? I'll move to number 2.
I'm having trouble hearing it.
Number 2 is generating energy. And this is This is pretty valuable, I think. It goes into creating energy, mental energy, particularly for situations in all sorts of walks of life. We know from being practitioners that our business demands mental energy, and it also demands physical energy. We work long days and we work long hours. And being fit to work long days and long hours is important. So I find and have found, and the authors of the book found, that in the buzzsaw of our day, and I think we've had other classes where we called it the whirlwind of our day, right? We often go from one thing to another thing, to another thing, to another thing in rapid succession. Do you find that that sometimes characterizes your day? Okay. One of the prescriptions that I have been practicing since I've read this book is his mantra of, before you go from project to project, you need to do what he calls rinse and release. And it's kind of simple. And I've tried it recently, and it works more than I thought it would. And it has to do with my scheduling, and it has to do with building in 20-minute to 1/2 hour gaps to walk away from the last thing I did in order to move to the next thing I'll do. Creating space between matters of importance of the projects that you have outlined for your day, for your week, or whatever it may be. I also found out this about myself. When I'm highly engaged in something, and we'll talk about engagement later, I get dehydrated. I actually get dehydrated. I can feel tightness in my limbs, tightness in my legs, tightness in my throat. So now I drink a lot more water. And the regenerative effect of water every couple of hours is pretty good, pretty good. I had some before I just came on. So my questions to you folks are to consider the pausing between the big things. And if you do that already, then you've got this down. That's part of the way that you operate. If you don't, and you find yourself depleted, try this rinse and release. The rinse part is getting the past thing out of your mind and releasing it so that it is not still draining you mentally when you move to the next important thing, right? I mean, what do they tell you to do with mouthwash? You rinse and release. And then what do? You do it again. All right. And I think so many of our days, whether you're dealing with family, whether you're dealing with clients, any of the walks that you're dealing with, your day is filled with varieties of those activities. Sometimes they're very unrelated to the last one that you did and the one that you have to go to. And creating mental space and energy space between the two activities may help refresh you for the one that you have to do. Thoughts on that? It's pretty self-explanatory.
Just have to try it.
Gotta try it. Yeah, gotta try it, And it was a very simple one for me. I'm a walker. I've told that story many, many times. I walk in the mall virtually every morning with my baseball buddies, all of whom are 60 years old or over. And that's a great way to start my day. I don't plunge in on email anymore. Right? The email gets read and gets looked at now starting after 8:30 when I'm back from my walk. So I have had a chance to rinse and release even before I've started the day, and it works pretty good. Not that I'm great at this. I mean, there are some days where, it's a whirlwind, as you all know. But it's good to know in your back pocket. Rinse and release matters. I say hi to my friend Joe. I see Joe there. How you doing, buddy? Good. Hi, Barbara. I guess she's in the corner.
Hey, John.
Go, shoot.
So I started a new practice of doing deep breathing, which, you see it all over the internet anymore. But, a lot of times I do very shallow breathing when I'm doing those big things. And I've learned to do deep breathing
Okay.
when you're doing that stuff. And it does give you more energy.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question, because I try deep breathing now and again, but you know what happens? It makes me lightheaded.
Right, yeah. It's a practice that you have to, work on, and that will go away. I mean, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
Great. So water and breathing, aren't they fundamental things in life?
If
Water and
I
breathing.
could comment on that breathing, because I just learned, and if you want to get scientific about it, that, we all have our cells, and the mitochondria are your energy. That's where your energy comes from, right? And the deep breathing allows those mitochondria to actually multiply and grow in numbers and strength. So there is scientific evidence that just stopping in the moment, taking those deep breaths actually does renew or regenerate your energy from a cellular level. And the water helps with that too. So they're both key.
Also connected in this, of course, is weight and diet and all those other things. I've had to work during COVID, particularly hard. The temptation, very often for me. All of you know that bartending is very dear to my heart. The temptation was to wrap up a mentally difficult day with a cocktail, right? That still is a temptation. No, I'm nowhere near a drunk. I'm not, but I don't do that anymore. I save that to, at the maximum, 2 days a week. So my wife, Rayanne, has her red glass of wine every night because that's her unwinder. I drink harder liquor, as Chuck knows. And, having a couple of drinks, that would just screw me for the next day. So my next time is Friday, and I can't wait to have my next cocktail. Anyway, think of it, I thought of something comical, and the guy has it in his book. He said when he's dealing with his small kids, there's this concept of putting a kid in timeout. Sometimes we got to put ourselves in timeout between doing one thing or another, where you go into the corner and you be good. So I don't know. Okay, moving on to number 3, if I may. And number 3 is assessing necessity.
Say again.
Assessing necessity.
Assessing, A-S-S-E-S-S-I-N-G, necessity, N-E-C-E-S-S-I-T-Y.
Assessing the what? Necessity?
Assessing necessity.
Okay, necessity, yes, okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
The tongue twister. And here's the premise. The greater, and this is worth noting, the greater the necessity of the activity that you're going to be involved in, the meeting you're going to be involved in, the project you're going to be involved in, the greater the need for you to be on your A game. You all can tell me your A game. You know when you're on your A game, and you know when you ain't on your A game. Okay? You can make all sorts of excuses for not being on your A game. We very often blame other people for us not being on our A game, and sometimes they're worthy of blame, you know. But I'd rather think the reverse of when we're not on our A game. I'd rather look at how we feel when we're on our A game. Okay? So when you think about it, and you think about what you feel like when you're on your A game, free associate with me for a second. You can turn your silences off. Give me a word of how you feel when you know you're on your A game.
Energized.
Energized.
Confident.
Confident.
Like $1 million.
Say it again.
Like $1 million.
Like $1 million.
Powerful.
Powerful. Doorbell ringing. No, I'm teasing. I heard a doorbell ring. How do you think your client feels when he or she is on their A game? Same things.
Same.
Basically the same things, right? It's a good place to be when you have the attention of someone on your A game and you're giving that person your A game. That can be challenging, right? Depending upon the alternative A game. But it also is probably the richest conversation you can have because you're approaching each other at your best, right? Which goes to the fact that sometimes when you're on your A game, the person you're talking to is not. You know, they might get on theirs a little bit later. So what do we do? What do we do with this A game concept? And what do we do with this necessity concept? Well, it is tied to how we plan our days. Not everything you're going to do today is going to be of great necessity. A lot of the stuff you're going to do today is going to be boring and rather humdrum, right? We know that.
Absolutely.
Your A game.
Company excluded.
Thank you, Joe. Is that a reflection on me or you? So your feeling as you go through the day is the exhaustion of being on your A game all day long is impossible, right? Sometimes the humdrum, the boring, the unnecessary things that you have to do should not be zapping activities because you don't need your A game to do them. You just need to perform the task. So in planning your schedules, your week ahead, your days ahead, the best suggestion that the author had here and others, like Darren Hardy makes the same suggestion, is you can only have so many A game moments in a week. Identifying and taking time before the week starts or the day starts to identify those A game moments will help you perform them better and get through the doldrums and the boring without the expenditure of too much energy, right? After this, I have to go to the bank after we talk because I'm the executor of a friend who's passed away his will. And I got to go over there and I got to dig up his bank accounts and his last deposit made in PNC Bank before he passed away on October 4th. I don't want to do that, right? I really don't want to do that. That doesn't require any A game on my part at all. It does require bringing up some feelings that I would not like to be revisiting again today, you know. But I'll go over and I'll be a functionary on that. This morning, before talking to you, I wanted to be more on my A game, you know, to focus and to be able to take our conversation further. So I worked harder on that than I worked on my walking over to PNC Bank and my conversation with whoever I'm going to talk to there. And you know what? Being with you makes it easier for me to go over to the bank later because I'll have accomplished an A game thing, you know. Small example. Now, here's two other activities that you can use on your A game. Hang out with other A gamers.
Can't because of COVID.
You have an A gamer sitting next to you, I think. You're lucky.
Not today.
Okay, then you guys need to go to separate homes today and find other A gamers. Wear your masks. Do all that appropriate stuff. But you get my point. We all have heard you want success, hang around with successful people, right? You want to feel energized, hang around with energetic people, right? You want to learn stuff, hang around with learning people. You want to be challenged, hang around with challenging people. You know, it really is a match. It really is a match. I'm lucky in my life. I play with a lot of A gamers. And I mean literally play with as well as work with a lot of A gamers. You know, got a lot of B and C gamers too, but they're not of necessity when you think about it. All right. The other way that gets you to be focused on your A game is to talk about it with others, to tell them that this is a project that's necessary. I need to be on my A game, and use them as a sounding board. Sometimes we call that accountability to another partner or to another friend, right? When you make public your commitment to your A game, you better be on it. When you take it out of the private thoughts of your mind, you better be on it. So when you tell your team leader that you're going on a listing appointment or a buyer appointment, right? Your team leader generally is encouraging to you, maybe giving you a tip or two, asking you if you're prepared, right? Maybe rehearsing something with you, all in preparation for you as a team member to be on your A game. If you're being coached by someone, it's the same thing, you know. The coach doesn't generally tell you what you want to do. The coach generally asks you what you want to do and reacts to it by saying, why do you want to do that? Who do you want to do it for? When do you want to get it done by? And what's your plan? That's what a coach does. You don't have to pay a lot of money to find that out, guys. I just told you. That's what a coach does. But it's that interaction with someone that you announce your goal, your plan for, that can give you the feedback you need. So tell others what it is that you're aiming for. Thoughts on that? Thoughts on the A game? We have A game experts. Is that what silence means? Good. Joe, do you have any thoughts on the A game? I guess not.
Yeah, I wish I had it this morning.
Okay.
You can relate it to sports a lot too, John. I know you're a big sports fan. You know, you've always got the guys that have those bad nights and they're not on their A game, and then you hit that spot and you're shooting par and doing all those things, and it yeah.
Par, Joe. What's par?
Well, per hole.
I've never shot par.
I'm
Never.
talking per hole, John.
Okay. I have to think hard about that too. Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the sports figure is a great example. The one that pops to mind is Michael Jordan. I mean, you've read so much about Michael Jordan, right? The thing about Jordan, and this will be the last Sports Illustration we'll use, what I loved about his story is Michael Jordan always wanted the last shot. In a tight game, Michael Jordan wanted the A shot, the last shot. And that was what impelled him to bring his A game every time. He wanted the last shot. And you know how many times he didn't make the last shot? 60%.
Wow.
He failed. He failed at his A game. You know, the times that he did make the last shot are recorded in history, and that's why he'll be forever a Hall of Famer. Tiger Woods probably similarly. All these guys, by the way, had coaches too. A putting coach, a swing coach, a how to pack your bag right coach. I mean, they all had these kinds of people. So sports figures are good to emulate, particularly those that are not involved in team sports. Nancy, a question?
No, I was going to say, I think I'm sitting here personally, it's the before and the after, like figuring out where everything can't be an A game, right? You don't have that amount of energy. So figuring out what needs to be the A game. But then more importantly, if you're not on your A game, if you've missed that shot, being able to let it go so you can be on your A game the next time. Holding on to it is just going to bring you down. So I think the before and after are just as key as the do.
Letting go of failure is tough. You know, very, very often when you don't get that listing, right, and you gave it your A game, or you don't get the buyer and you gave it your A game, it ain't your fault. Somebody came in and undersold you, bought the listing, you know. In our recruiting wars, when we really look at quality, high quality people who we would like to bring into Remax Advantage Realty, we don't get them all. We don't get many of them for one reason or another. But if we bring our A game about what our company is about and why we think we have value, they choose no. Lots of people have right to choose no, you know. Don't take it as personal as we sometimes take it, unless you know you didn't have your A game. Then you got a right to take it personal in some ways. All right, let's move on to the social side of the coin. I'm not looking at a clock. Loretta, how are we doing?
Good.
Okay. Does that mean we're halfway through?
It's 11:15.
Okay. So we're going to talk really fast. So right now in the next one, no. We'll look at the social side. And the first one on social side was increasing productivity. And first we need a definition of productivity. What is productivity? How is it measured? Do you know it when you see it? Is it hitting your numbers?
John, I think productivity is anything that takes you towards your goals. Any action you do, as long as it's taking you towards your ultimate goal, that is a productive, I think, thing to do.
Great definition, Joe. The things that take you to your goal, right? Whatever that goal may be. Here's what was the eye opener for me in this book. He does a explanation of outputs versus outcomes. And that's a golden nugget. The outcome is the final productivity. The output is where the pedal hits the metal. The output is the energy that you put into the activity to get the outcome. if we focus on, and this is his premise, and I agree with him, if we focus on the quality of our output, and output's a real easy word, it's what you put out to get to something, right? You will find that you hit more of your outcomes that you're looking to reach, those goals that Jill mentioned. So outputs are the work that you put out. Outcomes are the results. Right? The question for all of us becomes, how do we plan, how do we manage, and how do we identify our outputs on a regular basis? That's not easy, particularly in the whirlwind. And he has a method, he has a suggestion that you've heard before in varieties of ways. In everything that we do, long-range goal or short-range goal, the focus he suggests is, and you've read this before, make your daily goal or goals, if you have a couple during the day, your monthly goals, your yearly goals. You can't have a whole slew of those, so you got to be selective. And then you make, as he calls it, make the main thing the main thing. And in developing your outputs, you spend much more time outputting in the areas that you've identified as the main thing on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. Right? It's as simple as if you had a goal of losing 20 pounds, right? What inputs are you going to eliminate in your body on a regular basis in order to hit that? And then what are you going to do when you fall off the wagon? Are you going to be able to get back on? Think of the conversations that you may need to have with spouses and kids. You know, what are you going to put out to move it to the productivity of having the kid finally say, yeah, mom, yeah, dad, you were right, or whatever it may be. You know, what's the plan to get there? And the higher the necessity is for that to happen, the more you need your A game to get the right outputs, right? So all of this becomes sort of a puzzle with these 5 or 6 different things, right? On these outputs, once you've identified the main thing as the main thing, mastering the art of execution is what you've got to do. We've all had classes where we've talked about WIGs, which is a wildly important goals, or the BHAGs, you know, the big, hairy, audacious goal. We've all taken other gurus that have told us that. And they all require us to come up and identify the goal, the why, et cetera, and then to set up a couple of steps to doing that, right? Those are important activities to do, and I wouldn't overthink it. I simply would sit down and say to myself, what are the outputs I need to get these outcomes? The demon in planning a lot of this is procrastination. How many of you suffer from that? Okay. Procrastination is born out of 2 things. One of them I always understood. For me, procrastination was sometimes tied to fear. You know, I really didn't want to face the thing that I had to face, or the conversation I wanted to have, or the feeling that I was having internally, or even the thing that I knew I had to do. So I put it off and put it off and put it off, as you all have experienced. And you know, a funny thing about that, it never goes away. At some point, you face it. And very, very often, as Shakespeare used to say, not used to say, I don't know whether Shakespeare used to say this, but anyway, as somewhere Shakespeare said, our fear is a result of our worry about and anticipating how bad it's going to be. And his phrase in Old English was, "The readiness is all." That means that it is the performance of the task that you are fearing to do is much more momentous in your mind as you get ready to do it before you actually do it. In other words, that didn't turn out to be so bad after all. But yet we still put it off and we procrastinate. The second point of procrastination that I did find an aha in is because very often,
I think Sharon was trying to say something.
I'm sorry, Sharon, I didn't see you.
Oh, I don't know if you were getting ready to say this, but I actually read something, I don't remember the book now, but it was about procrastination, which I'm very good at. I'm very good at it.
We're all
And-
pros.
And one of the reasons behind procrastination is if you want things to be perfect, you're going to procrastinate. That's one of my big issues. So I don't start because I want it to be perfect. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I see a lot of nodded heads. Right. And some writers have said that striving for perfection is an excuse not to do something, you know, which is some sort of a connection to what Sharon was just saying, you know. The other piece that I thought was interesting is that procrastination is sometimes at play when we're not really all that interested in what it is that we are doing. The task doesn't intrinsically matter to us. It's not important. So we put it off and we put it off and we put it off, right? Unfortunately, it can become important when we don't address it, right? But getting up for, you all know what you feel. You all know what you feel it when you feel pumped to do something. You know, you feel pumped. A lot of the stuff we do every day, we don't feel pumped for, right? So therefore, we put it off. We put it off. So going back and identifying the things, the big things, the main things of the main things of our day, those are the ones that the A game, being on the A game, help to pump us up for, you know? I don't feel procrastination as much as I used to because, personally, I'm recognizing the humdrum in my life that I have to do. And there's no other time to recognize humdrum during the time that we're in now, when we're isolated somewhat from each other. Hopefully that will change. Okay. A question here for you is just take a look at yourself over the next couple of days and look at the percentage of your day that is spent doing things that you really don't believe are that important. That's kind of an eye-opener when you do it. And congratulations to you if you find that the majority of the things that you're engaged in, either as they're related to family or work or whatever it may be, are important to you, intrinsically important to you in your gut. That's pretty good. I congratulate you for that. Congratulate you for that. They're a little bit tough to find in this environment that we're in. Okay, we got two more to go, and I want to make sure that I cover them. Developing influence was the next one. And influence is defined as follows. It's real simple. The power to shape beliefs and behaviors of others. The power to shape beliefs and behavior of others. It is the way leaders lead. It is the way leaders lead in shaping the beliefs and behaviors of others. So think about how you influence others. Think of the style of influence that you use. Think of the influence that you may exert with clients. Are you too directive? Are they receptive to that kind of influence? Are you too verbal and they're not? Are they a visual person and you don't have data and forms and things that they can look at? All right. One of the things that makes Zooming hard in some ways is that we have some visual here and screening back and forth among pages to look at and to follow outlines and everything can be very time consuming. So we're left with the verbal, we're left with the interchange, and trying to influence one another by our thought can be challenging if this is the only frame of reference that we have. And if it's the frame of reference you're using with clients, remember that. Remember that. So one of the activities that is suggested, at least in real estate, is if you are in a Zoom situation and you are imparting your value and your worth, follow it up with a personal delivery of the documents, of the paperwork, of the points that you made in your discussion. It's extra work. Remember the old days, Jay, when you used to drop stuff off at the client's house rather than just PDF it over? Remember the days when you and I and a lot of people on the screen, when we were working with buyers, we actually got the opportunity to go into the appointment and make the presentation on behalf of our buyers, with the listing agent sitting there with the seller. Remember those days? I think they're gone forever. When was the last time you as a buyer agent had the opportunity to meet the seller? Unless you were selling your own listing, of course. Gone. Gone are those days. All right. There are a couple of ways that the author approaches this influence question, and one of them is by asking people what they would prefer: to be told, right, or to be shown, or is it a combination of the two? Very often, that's a question that's not being asked, and they'll be surprised, and you may be surprised at their answer. I believe of the generations that we're most dealing with now, the millennials will tell you. I believe that Gen Z is really going to tell you. Whether they're going to tell you by skywriting or not, I have no idea, but they're going to tell you in some way, right? The boomer and the X generation is more reserved with that. We allow the expert, right, to be the explainer and the demonstrator. So it's important to know those generations and how you're interacting with those folks. So, do you like to be told, or do you like to be asked? The people who are best at asking are people who have demonstrated that they are givers. Lots of people on this, everybody on this Zoom today that I have met, I'm checking everybody to make sure I'm not wrong about this. Everybody on this Zoom, I have seen demonstrations of or heard stories about your givingness. Very easy to ask somebody that you've given something to for something. Think of being a giver as an influence item. In organizations and companies, to exert influence on companies, leaders have to trusting the right people, and then they have to get out of the way a little bit. I'm speaking to team leaders here. in some sense. It's hard to be a team leader. It's hard to be a leader in an organization. And many of you, whether you're a team leader in real estate or leaders in other organizations, right? The trust element is important, but equally as important is the people that you're trusting have to be given autonomy, right? They have to be allowed to do the projects. They have to be allowed to take the steps, not necessarily the way you would take them, but they have to be allowed to do the work that you're allowing them to do. Your clients have to be trusted, led by you, to take the steps that you have agreed between you and your client to take. In a way, every real estate agent becomes the manager of a little team. It's the team of you and the buyer, the seller, the lender, the home inspector, whatever the inspector is, right? So the autonomy, allowing the parts to be the autonomy or be autonomous and do their tasks is essential. But what the leader has to do is be the puppeteer. You got to be the one to check back and to make sure that the folks have done it. Right? I know Joe is a team leader. I know Linda is a team leader, very capable team leaders. I know Chuck and Sharon have their own team there. They have a team member. Most of the rest of us, I think, on here are solos. But part of what the team leader, whoever it's going to be appointed to do, has to do is, in a sense, be the accountability partner for the rest of those people. You know, and that's another set of skills, another set of time. All right. So how are you effective in this? Well, when you're working with newer people in real estate, which I enjoy doing, Brandon is one of them, one of the jobs that we're trying to do in mentoring someone, and I suggest that among team leaders who are bringing people on their team. Zugel, by the way, is a team leader as well. I don't see her face. I just saw her name here. Part of your job is to teach others how to think, isn't it? It's really teaching others how to think. Right? And being open to their thoughts about how they like to think. All right. Number two, challenge them. Challenge those team members to establish connections, to make contributions to the team. All right. I know personally that Linda does this well, I believe. She's very open to what her team folks have to say. At least that's my perception. And then finally, be a role model. Be a role model. Now that extends beyond being a team leader here. That's being a role model as an agent as well for your customers or clients, right? And being a role model is an honor if you're seen as that. Okay. The last point that I'll hit is courage. And before I do that, I'll advise you to read the book. It's better than what I could have done here. Courage starts with this recognition. Admit up front that some things are tough to do. Some people are tough to deal with. And some things that are worthwhile will have many levels of challenge. When you approach those things that you have to deal with without recognizing that they will have their challenges, right, to them, it's hard to develop the oomph to attack them. You're more likely to run away from them. Therefore, you need to develop the courage to do them. All right. Ask yourself this question. Is the outcome that you're looking for going to be worth the journey that you have to take to get there? Is the outcome you're looking for going to be worth the journey that you have to take to get there? And if the outcome is going to be worth the journey, I dare say it requires your A game, right? To get there. Your plan, et cetera, because it's a journey, right? I I think that the best characteristic that a leader or an influencer can take to any situation is to simply be authentic. You know when you are your authentic self. I have had authentic moments with 80% of the people on this screen. And it feels good when I meet the authentic you. And the authentic you isn't in process of doing something. It's a sharing moment, right? Boy, do you want to be that way with your customers or your clients. You really want that elevated experience with them, with family members, with spouses. The authenticity trumps the role that we play so often. I remember in choosing a line from a movie. How many of you saw The American President with Michael Douglas and Annette Bening, right? She's a lobbyist and he's the president. And he's lost his wife and the country's feeling sorry for him. But he's kind of a good leader, I would think, right? And when he finally has to face the fact that he caved on something so that one of the other, I guess, things he wanted to get through Congress got passed. He compromised Annette Bening's lobbying very, very good program, okay? And finally, he has to face this, and he has to face it at a press conference, and he does. And he used a line that I think is a really good line to close on. He looks at the senators of the opposing party, and he says, I'm going to fight the fights that are worth fighting for. And therefore, tomorrow, I'm going to do the crime bill or I'm going to do whatever. We look to fight the fights that are worth fighting for, be they with our customers, with our family, with our team members. But the more worth they're worth fighting for, the more we may look at some of these methods that we do. Right? I think of the founding fathers 250 years ago. It took a lot of gumption to fight the Revolutionary War against the British. They fought the fight worth fighting for. So we sort of say, that's my American flag speech. I'm done. Loretta, I can open it for questions, or I've had enough of myself, and I assume you've had enough of me too. So I'm okay. Any thoughts? And we wrap up. Joe, I'm going to start the Great Books Club next month.
Oh, great. Looking forward to it.
Out invites. The invites will go out company-wide. We're using the book, by the way, I'll announce it today. The book is called Influencers.
Okay.
And I'll send you out all the details on it. It's going to be, Loretta, what did we decide? It's going to be a Thursday afternoon, I think, at the end of February. We're going to do it by Zoom, and it'll be like from 3 to 4:30, I think. So it's a good book. It's a good book. It's a good book. Final thoughts by anybody or any reflections, comment? Loretta, what time is it? I haven't looked at my watch.
All right. One, I'm going to buy you a watch, and two, it's 11:40. You're early.
I'm early.
Look at you.
All right, and I'm finished.
And you're finished.
And I'm finished.
You did a great job.
With any other thoughts, guys, send me an email if you want to with a reflection or a question. I'll get back to you on that. I answer my emails.